There is also a tweet coming in from the Indian Prime Minister that is there on your screens. I'm going to read that out. He has said, and I quote Narendra Modi here, concluding a productive visit to China where I attended the SCO summit and interacted with various world leaders. Also emphasized India's stand on key global issues. Thankful to President Xi Jinping, the Chinese government and people for the successful organization of this summit. So the Indian Prime Minister there calling his visit to China both productive as well as successful. Gauri still with us. Gauri, sum up for us the day that has gone by. We've seen the Prime Minister just in plane for New Delhi, but the key takeaways from you on the ground, you've been there covering every aspect of his visit.
Indeed, Vedika, several key aspects that really define SCO Summit 2025. First and foremost, which is that every journalist here in this room, which has about 2,500 to 3,000 journalists, asked about India, asked about India's position, asked about the bilaterals. That just tells you the significance of the messaging in terms of New Delhi's stance and the message that it was sending to the world. So that's the first and biggest takeaway in terms of SCO. The second also was the image that came out with the three leaders together, that is Russian President Vladimir Putin, his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. Yes, it was an informal meeting just ahead of the formal heads of state discussion of the SCO summit. But those optics matter. And if you see in terms of diplomacy, not everything has to be written. Whatever is not written in words and statements is what you decipher through body language. And those optics really did come out very strongly, suggesting that the three leaders are looking to potentially take this dialogue discussion forward. Whatever may be the format, whatever may be the platform, but the intent itself and the display of that was very significant. Now, the other important bit, the bilateral that has just concluded with President Putin, we put that out as well, the message and the tweet that Prime Minister Modi put out, which is extremely significant, which also spoke about economic partnerships, which included specifics with regarding fertilizers, with regarding several others. And I think that's equally important, that needs to be highlighted, because economic partnership and deepening of that between India and Russia is also going to be extremely significant from our trade exposure point of view, and also diversification of our overall trade outlooks. We already saw last month China had put an unofficial freeze with regards to export of rare earth minerals and fertilizers to India. Yes, that freeze got lifted when Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was in India, but that freeze was there and it impacted Indian businesses, it impacted India Inc. In the backdrop of that, this meeting and this statement that Prime Minister Modi has put out on social media platform X indicates that those aspects, the trade aspect in terms of India-Russia relationship, is also going to be extremely significant. As far as Tianjin is concerned, if there's one single headline that has to come out of here, Vedika, that will be a collective condemnation for the Pahelgam terror attack in April 2025, yes. Something that did not happen at the defense minister's level and happened at the heads of state level.
Gauri, to Vishnu also, who joins us live from the newsroom. Vishnu, baby steps forward with China because of the mistrust. Obviously, we have taken steps ahead. Expected lines with Russia in terms of the strong partnership between the two countries. You've seen the bonhomie, you've seen the warmth, you've seen that message going out to the US. But would you say the unexpected takeaway really would be the collective condemnation of the terror attack in Pahelgam that stands out as the biggest diplomatic win for India from the summit?
Yeah, absolutely. The mention of Pahelgam over there is very, very important. The fact that the joint communique quite clearly mentions that that the countries as sovereign authorities need to bring to justice those who are responsible for terror. That is very, very important as far as India is concerned. But I do believe another statement that we've seen in the last little while, which is from the Prime Minister, where he talks about the conversation with President Putin, where he refers to the peaceful resolution of the conflict in Ukraine, is important because it comes just a few hours after President Putin told the SCO leaders that he thanked China and India for their role in or their suggestion or their belief that the war between Russia and Ukraine must come to an end. This is obviously at a stage when America continues to push very hard for an end to the war. And in as much as that is a critical move, I think Putin's reference to the role of India is important because, India is autonomous. India is, part of a multipolar setup, as it were, and therefore also has a role. And remember, our Prime Minister traveled to Kiev last year. I was there for that visit where, along with the National Security Advisor, the Foreign Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and others, after taking a train journey lasting more than 15 odd hours, the Prime Minister was able to tell President Zelensky that, look, please, we are here not to lecture you, but to urge you to bring an end to the war. India's commitment to this is important. The President Zelensky did speak to the Prime Minister as well a couple of days back. That's very, very important. And perhaps there was a message from the Ukrainian President which Prime Minister Modi conveyed to President Putin during that meeting today. So we'll have to see what happens. India is not a small player when it comes to calling for an end of the war in Europe. And that part of that statement, which has been reflected in terms of Prime Minister Modi's tweet, is also quite significant.
Like you said, Zelensky did dial Modi. You also have Vladimir Putin, who's mentioned India in terms of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia as well, and the role that it can play. And you've had the Indian Prime Minister himself even today talk about how India wants peace in that region. So clearly, it seems that there could be an important role that the Indian Prime Minister will play in the coming days, because there has been this repeated statement from all three on India's role there.
Yeah, and remember that Prime Minister Modi has traveled to Russia as well with that same message last year, saying that, look, we've reached out to the Ukrainians, we are reaching out to you, please let's find a political solution to an end to the war. That's the way India has always seen it. Now, the other parts of, the conversation, including with Putin, included discussions on trade, fertilizer, space, security and culture. India has a very important and deep military relationship with Russia. The fact that you had Pete Navarro, the advisor to President Trump, criticize India's continued imports of defense equipment from Russia is something that doesn't sit well in Delhi. There is no explicit mention of India's, oil trade with Russia, but there is no policy whatsoever for India to bring that down, despite what the United States has to say. One would assume that that will continue. So India carrying out what we believe is necessary in our national interest, and I think that is what has been elaborated, in these very warm, cordial ties, and discussions between China, Russia and India.
And the message, Gauri, that goes out not only to the US but the world from the SCO stage today was, despite all the rhetoric coming in from the White House, the relations between India and Russia remain strong.
I think it is rather interesting.
The fact that the messaging that came out where Prime Minister Modi put that message out on social media platform, very clearly saying that message that he had an excellent meeting with President Putin and a whole host of issues were discussed. As Vishnu was saying, Ukraine is one key aspect of that discussion that came up, and something that the PM mentioned in his opening comments, and also at the SCO summit as the deliberation as well. There also, India had mentioned Ukraine. So it was clear that Ukraine, in some form or the other, the conflict is likely to feature in those talks. It also indicates that India is now a player in some form as far as identifying a potential peace for a roadmap. Having said that, the other aspects of this meeting, trade being one, is extremely significant. Critical minerals, fertilizers, other aspects, energy security, that was also mentioned, is extremely significant because, yes, you mentioned, Vedika, about the sharp rhetoric coming in from Trump administration. India has been extremely measured in its response and has not responded to those undiplomatic comments coming in from America, the Trump administration. But will that and did that have a bearing in terms of the discussions that took place between the two leaders? Read out the statement, which clearly talks about energy security being a key area that was discussed and focused when the two leaders met. They met for almost 50 minutes and a whole host of issues were discussed. And the sense one gets is that defense could be another area where one can see more progress happening going forward. Will that be in the form of defense deals? Will that be in the form of greater defense cooperation? Remains to be seen. India has already spoken about and its intent for building a Sudarshan Chakra. What what are the odds of America now playing a great and significant role in India's Sudarshan Chakra, given the rhetoric that's coming in from Washington?
All right.
That is a key question, which means that Russia is likely to be a very important and significant stakeholder as far as the defense cooperation that India and Russia have.
Gauri and Vishnu, we'll keep coming back to you for more. But before we move on, we just want to once again replay those statements by the Indian Prime Minister ahead of the bilateral meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
कठिन से कठिन परिस्थितियों में भी भारत और रूस हमेशा कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर चले हैं। हमारा करीबी सहयोग न केवल दोनों देशों के लोगों के लिए बल्कि वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है। आपको मिलना मतलब एक यादगार मीटिंग भी होती है, बहुत सी चीजों की जानकारियों का आदान प्रदान करने का अवसर मिलता है। हम लगातार संपर्क में रहे हैं। दोनों पक्षों के बीच नियमित रूप से कई उच्च स्तरीय बैठकें भी हुई है। इस वर्ष दिसंबर में हमारी 23वीं समिट के लिए 140 करोड़ भारतीय उत्सुकता पूर्वक आपका इंतजार कर रहे हैं। एक्सेलेंसी, यूक्रेन में चल रहे संघर्ष के विषय में हम लगातार चर्चा करते रहे हैं। हाल में किए गए शांति के सभी प्रयासों का हम स्वागत करते हैं। हम आशा करते हैं कि सभी पक्ष कंस्ट्रक्टिवली आगे बढ़ेंगे, संघर्ष को जल्द से जल्द खत्म करने और स्थायी शांति स्थापित करने का रास्ता खोजना होगा। ये पूरी मानवता की पुकार है।